Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Designing More Networking Friendly and Profitable Events, events. This is a really exciting presentation that we have today. It's more of an active session than a presentation, so a little bit different than the format you're used to if you've attended before. Also, if you've attended before, you know this regular spiel, but for those of you who are new, welcome. Cadmium CD, the people who sponsor this event, they were founded back in 2000 by Peter and Michelle Wyatt, who were chemical engineers at the time, bringing home those big binders full of conference proceedings. And, you know, like most good business ideas, they thought there must be a better way. So they started putting those proceedings on CD, hence Cadmium CD. That evolved over time to be the full platform, the full product suite that we have today. Covers everything from abstracts to apps for your conferences, trade shows, and events. This is actually the last time I'm giving that spiel because we actually did a rebrand that we launched yesterday, and you're going to start to slowly see the branding on these events change over the next few weeks and months. I say we're over 100 team members, but with that new brand and the new company that we're now part of, which is just called Cadmium, it's actually over 175 team members, and we're distributed throughout the US, and we have many more products than 12 products now. So stay tuned for that. You're going to get a lot of more information about that in the next few weeks. So get excited about that. You can go to gocadmium.com to check out some of the new things we have going on. With that, I'm going to introduce our speakers today, or I guess they're participants today, the way that they've structured this presentation, which should be a lot of fun. Lee Gimpel is the founder of Better Meetings, a meeting facilitation, training, and design firm in Washington, DC. And Better Meetings works to improve everyday meetings, conferences, and networking events. The company works with numerous associations, corporate and government clients just like you. So if you get a lot out of this session, I encourage you to reach out to Lee after to figure out how you can implement some of these things at your meetings, virtual or in person. And then we have Pam Rosenberg, who is a CAE, Certified Association Executive, and she's the Manager of Learning and Development for the Risk Management Association. Her focus is in face-to-face and virtual programming for smaller and mid to large scale education and networking events. And she's been in the association management world for over 12 years. So Lee, Pam, welcome. I'm gonna drop off here unless you tell me to get back on, but I'm really excited and looking forward to some of the activities that you have planned to show us today.
Cool. Thank you, Mike. Thank you. I was going to say Cadmium CD, but I think it's just Cadmium now, so that's fun. And a super big thank you in advance to you, Pam. Yeah, I was really excited to do this, and I think we're not going to talk about sort of engagement beyond networking, but it's really different when Cadmium says, "Hey, Lee, do you want to do a presentation?" And I was like, "Oh man, 45 minutes of me doing PowerPoint. I don't know that people are going to enjoy that." But you know, the idea of having a conversation with someone. I don't know. I'm looking forward to it, Pam. How are you, Pam, by the way?
How old am I?
How are you?
Oh, okay. I'm good. Thank you. Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for asking. Thank you for including me in this opportunity.
Yeah. So you guys know, or you, the assembled masses that cannot see each other, know who we are. And what we're going to try and do is try and get you to introduce yourselves. And this is going to be hard because you're not on camera. We realize that. But what we're going to do, if you've done anything with me before, you've probably already done this. We're going to do something called the chat storm. And I'm just going to drop the info into the instructions into the chat, basically. So I think it's just really important when we talk about if we're going to say networking is this really key thing and we really want people to be involved and we really want them to meet each other, let's do that from the start and let's really prioritize it. So you want to, well, I'll read through here. So what I just want you to do is hold on, don't hit enter yet, but if you can in the chat tell us who you are and just hold on to it for a second, then we're all going to hit enter at the same time. It's going to pop up. That's the storm part of it, chat storm, boom. So your name, your organization, your location, where you are, that could be you're in Chicago, for example, or it could be, you know, I'm in my living room, whatever that is. And then, you know, whatever else you want to do. And then I think what I'd asked you to do is share some good news. Could be anything. Mine is that I just put up this new shelving unit over here that I'm very excited about. Also, I just got new allergy medicine that I'm also excited about. So it does not have to be huge, but if you got a new job, you had a new baby, you got a new dog, anything like that, that would be great. And whatever else you want to enter. We're going to give you like 2 sort of awkward minutes of silence here at the beginning of this. But I think just to drive home that there are other people out there, we're going to sort of, put a spotlight on you guys before we start here. So start typing. Hopefully there's 60 or 70 of you who are now typing away. You can't see each other, but we know you're there. And yeah, we'll give you a countdown in just about a minute or 2. We'll all do this at the same time. So,
hey Lee, I'm getting feedback that some people are having trouble with the chat box. If you cannot see the chat box, please enter it in the questions box. We'll see those come in and we'll read them out as you enter information. So I apologize for that. Looks like there are some issues with the chat box, but if you enter those into questions, we can see them, we'll read them out and know who's here. And I just wanted to throw that in. Lee, I'm gonna hand it back to you.
Cool, thanks, Mike. And also, if you're okay, we're gonna maybe try and bring some folks onto camera if we can. And if you wanna just add a little asterisk or a little star to your name, we're gonna see if we can bring some people to the stage. This may be a high degree of difficulty, but if you're not in your pajamas, if your hair is not crazy, if you don't have a crying baby, you want to just add an asterisk, we'll see if we can bring some people to the stage. And now I feel like we should play some elevator music or something.
Do you want me to read out these names and organizations as they come in?
Let's see. I do see. Yeah, I see the stuff coming in up on. I see stuff coming up on the questions.
And one of the things that Lee always likes to mention if you are going to do an activity like this, it's the muscle memory part of it. That's the thing that we always talk about. You're just used to pressing enter. But typically when this works, Lee said, okay, go. And you do see that chat storm. So that's a fun thing to get your brain thinking a little bit differently than it typically would.
Yeah, so maybe the chat is maybe the chat is not working here, but I do see people coming through on the Q&A. If it does work in the chat, let's have you enter that now. And if it doesn't work on the chat, we're going to do it in Q&A. And then maybe Mike and Rachel, if you want to copy in some of those, we're going to sort of adapt here on the fly. I feel like the chat permissions may be for us only or outgoing. Oh, that's interesting. Maybe not. It's a fun thing about doing events. We never know what's actually going to happen until we actually do it. This is exciting.
I'm going to go ahead and
there's
drop
a participant, if I can interrupt, I just want to read some of these out loud because they're really nice. And I'm going to say your names because you've written in. So hopefully that it means that we can put your name out there. But Shirley C said, can't travel, so I decided to subscribe to a Japanese treat box delivered to home. That's kind of fabulous. I'd like to know the name of that.
I'm looking at how many of the good newses are getting my second shot. Mine's on the 11th. So Pfizer, in case anyone knows or anyone cares.
Jerry gets to see their daughter after more than a year of absence in COVID. That's huge. I'm so glad to hear all these new stories. Yeah, oh, Jerry. Okay, great. Thank you for pacing that Cadmium team.
Yeah. So we're sort of doing this. We're adapting here. So I saw
a new bike. Is this a smart bike or an outdoor bike? An indoor spin bike? What is this, Heather M? Let us know. So these are just little things you can connect. And then if you're in another platform like this one, you could have sidebar conversations and just build that rapport like you normally would in person at a conference.
Mike, can you pull Carmen Beck onto camera? Carmen, I see that you're okay sharing. So we're gonna see if this works. And we're gonna learn about Stroopwafel, I think. That's what I'm excited about here. So I guess this is super obvious, but this is not like a normal presentation. And I am not advocating that every time you do a presentation at any of your conferences, it has to look like this. But I think if we're talking about networking, we're trying to walk the talk here today. And there you are, Carmen. Are Are you on audio, Carmen? Can you hear us or can you talk to us? I guess that's the question.
Now I am.
No, you are. Awesome.
Oh, and I see it's dark in here.
It's all good. We're all adjusted to this stuff. Carmen, so we see, Pam and I see in the Q&A who you are, and I think we may eventually be pasting this in here, or Mike and Rachel may be doing it, but basically tell us what you just typed in here. How about that?
Just answered your questions. The good news was we just finished phase 1 of our all virtual meeting using Cadmium. Phase 2 starts Monday, so we don't really have much of a break, but and then I've started watching the OC, which I know premiered like 15 years ago, but it's my guilty pleasure during this really stressful virtual meeting time in my life. And then I just had a stroop waffle.
Do you want to tell us what a stroop waffle is? I happen to know, but I can't imagine everybody knows what stroop waffles are.
Yeah, they are, it's like a cookie. It's a very thin waffle with maple syrup inside of it. And you microwave it for like 7 seconds. And I like it with coffee or tea. It's from
I think it's Dutch.
yes, it's Dutch. And so I had an exhibitor that would bring them to me from Europe about 15 or 20 years ago. And now you can find them pretty much anywhere. I got mine at HEB.
Cool. HEB sounds like you're probably in Texas.
Yes.
And Carmen, tell us who you work for as well.
Pediatric Academic Societies. It's a pediatric research meeting.
Cool. Thank you for sharing, Carmen. I don't know that we have chat like really working, but I think if you can all like silently do like a yay Carmen thing, Carmen's going to feel like those good vibes there in Texas. All right, thank you, Carmen. And I guess we can let you go back to not being on camera and enjoying the rest of this.
Thank you.
Also, Carmen. It's Carmen. I see Amy and I are also thinking about allergies. I appreciate that. Okay, so we're pasting those in. You know, we're sort of adapting, so that's fun. We are probably going to do a poll in a second, but just quickly, we'll come back to this in about probably 15 or 20 minutes. But you know, it's just a little moment where we bring Carmen up on the stage. We don't have to, right? Like Pam and I are the very important speakers, and this is our time. But I think, you know, if we think about the number of times in a conference when we can elevate someone, we can put them on stage, we can shine the spotlight on them. You know, it just makes it a lot easier that if you're Carmen walking around at, you know, whatever this conference is, it's a lot easier for people to come up to you and go, I also love stroopwafel or something like that, as opposed to someone just sort of like trying to look at your name tag as you wander by and see if there's something to talk about. So little things like that. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. So let me I'm going to drop this in here too. Mike was good enough to give us an opportunity to say that if we wanted to promote something that was like a hands-on, or we're going to do some breakouts and it's going to be a little different than what this looks like, I'm going to drop that into the chat. Whole hands-on like networking thing that we'll do in a couple of weeks as sort of a follow-up to this. So anyway, we're going to do that. Mike, if you want to just launch that poll, that would be awesome, and then we'll talk about the results of that poll. Here we go. Thank you.
So I'm sure at some point you've all participated in an e-poll in some regard. I'm sure some of you have also seen other ways to do like text polling and stuff, but all of the platforms at this point have probably integrated their own internal polling software, and it's fun. And then you can probably, like Lee was saying, spotlight someone else and have a friendly conversation or a healthy debate, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think, you know, Pam and I were talking about this before. I think that the polls are great, but sometimes we confuse polls, or polls get confused for being, you know, engagement. People are like, we have this really engaging webinar and it has one poll. So as sort of a separate topic here to engagement that's not networking, I would just say like one poll is probably not the answer to keeping people totally engaged. Hopefully it's still got you engaged here though. So Mike, if it looks like people are voting
Yeah, we've
on
got
the,
82% completed. So Mike, can we share the results?
Yep, I'll close it now. And then we will share.
oh, okay, interesting.
Good that 0% of you thought 0% should be
Okay.
networking.
I like the 2% and 100%. Those are my people, I think. All right, Pam, when you look at this, what does this say to you? Actually, let me step back, Pam. I'm gonna ask you a question. So I feel like you've had this little epiphany, and we've talked about this over the last year or so in terms of networking's role in events. And so it looks like, the majority of folks there, or a plurality of people, were saying that's about 50% networking. How do you feel about that? And I guess my lead in here is, you had written something on the ASAE Collaborate board at one point that said something like, I don't want to plan an event that I don't actually want to go to. And I want you to tell me more about that.
Yeah, so it's no surprise all of us have attended, I hope, at least at some point, attended or organized a conference, large, small, whatever the scale is. And I know, again, this is not a shocking statement, but it has really given us true definition of and thrown a typical meeting on its rear. We don't have to have all of these, breakout sessions, in-person things where there's all these concurrent sessions going on, where there's technical things or there's straight lecture, because it has forced us all to be virtual. And we all know this, that everybody can attend and participate and learn in the straight lecture, Zoom recorded videos and so on, Zoom, GoToWebinar, whatever your flavor is. And that is 100% not engaging, not dynamic. This is no surprise to you. And like Lee was saying before, I attended a very large industry conference 8, 9, 10 months ago, and I was in the process. We hadn't quite pulled out of our in-person conference yet, but we were getting ready to do that. And I know that you all, I'm assuming, do not want to sit and stare at a screen and look at PowerPoint slides or look at a webcam necessarily where there's straight lecture. Lee and I we're just our webcams right now. There's so much fatigue. But when we do offer these networking opportunities, and you have to do run-throughs, and that's not saying that we have an easy formula by any means, and it's taken a lot of time and a lot of practice, and you also need a lot of buy-in from your stakeholders, from your board, from your committee members. But the big takeaways from even our in-person conferences, forget about what the topics were. As soon as I got on the plane and left the conference, I was like, I'm looking at my notebook, like I took a whole bunch of notes, like that's great and all, but it's the connections that you make. And I was fortunate to meet Lee virtually. I've never actually met Lee in person. Maybe I have at some point in my former pre-COVID life, pre-pandemic life. But these are the people that are going to help you further your own career, give you that next great idea. This is how we learn from each other. And as Lee said, there was no way I was going to put on a conference that the board or the committee had envisioned. I just said, absolutely not. I can't have that on my reputation. The CEUs are always going to be there. And it was a strange time. And so I hope that you all consider that at some point and maybe re-envision what a typical conference meeting looks like for your group, for your organization. And well, we've always had 25 hours of continuing ed, but why? Why do you have that? Just be really intentional and think about it and come up with a game plan, go to test with your own internal staff, see if this actually works. So I'm kind of rambling a little bit, Lee, but really just think very hard about, and again, this is probably we're in this over a year now. Think about where we can have networking. And yes, we've got the requirements. We have to have 1 hour of continuing ed to be able to offer the CEUs, but is that what's really important to people right now? Because everybody's offering CEUs and everybody's got webinars. So.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's a largely association audience here that that's in front of us. And what is an association? It's a group of people, and who are those group of people? They're people that all come together over, I forget, Carmen, pediatrics academics or something, right? Like, we're the only people in the world that care about pediatric oncology or something like that, right? And we have one chance a year to get together. And what's the piece that people really like? Getting together with other people who understand, what they're complaining about, what their problems are, and how to solve it. And part of that might be sitting in a room and watching a presentation on it, but an awful lot of that value comes from, do I get to talk to people? Do I get to connect with them? And I sketched this out earlier. This is when we look at conference agendas, right? They often look like they're like 10 or 20% networking, and then it's like all content, it's all learning sessions. And then as I think you all picked up when we did the survey here, this is what happens when you ask people, well, what do you want out of a conference, or what was the value for it? It tends to be a lot more 50-50 of, yeah, I actually got a lot more out of meeting Pam in the hallway, and like I got a job out of that, as opposed to I was sitting in a session. And I think, as you're saying, Pam, like there's an awful lot of opportunities for people just to sit at home and do those learning modules or get their CEUs. That's different than coming together for a conference, a meeting, a gathering of folks. Also, while we're talking, if you have questions and you want to drop them into the Q&A section there, the question section, we're going to try and get to those midstream instead of saving them all for the very end. So, don't just save the questions till the end. If you got questions, we'll try and get to them sooner rather than later. And so let's talk about some actual stuff that we might do. So we've done already, right? We just did this chat storm. What does that look like in person? It could look like, we could go around a room and we could all introduce ourselves. We could do something where we put something on the board. We'll talk about that in a sec. But I think it's important to recognize that there are other people in a room that are not just the people on stage, the keynote, the board, that there's, hundreds or thousands of other people at this event. So that's the first thing. I think is just acknowledging that those people are there and they're important. And then, the other thing that we did is this little micro celebrity moment of bringing Carmen up. And I think just how can we drop those into online events or in-person events in a way to make people who are briefly famous, as opposed to like, obviously your keynote is going to be someone that everyone wants to talk to, but how do we make it easy for people who aren't the keynote there? So anyway, that's what we've done so far. Pam and I have each come up with like late night cards to come up with some ideas as to how to do networking in person and online. What do you got there, Pam? What are you holding?
So name tags. I'm assuming this is coming through correctly.
Yeah, that's great.
Right, they're not mirroring right now. Name tags. I have a whole ring of name tags. I'm sure you all do as well. And like, I don't have to tell you what they look like. It's got your name, it's got your organization. And I love the term that Lee used. It has a ton of real estate, but how can we improve that? I know that the ASAE conference, they have a couple ones that are outside of what your typical job role is. But if you were to see my name badge, you're going to see I'm with the Risk Management Association. But that really doesn't mean anything to you. So how can we, use that space, that real estate? First of all, choose a good name tag. Make sure that's not a loud one. It doesn't clink all the time while we're in these rooms and whatnot. But when you're in person, you can sure throw a sponsor logo on there, and that's great. But let's, during the registration process, and even during a virtual registration process, find out something more about them that makes them human, and that doesn't just tell them what their job is. If I'm the manager of learning development. All right, cool, that's fine. But what are my interests? What are my hobbies? Where do I live? Again, where do I live is not really that exciting or earth-shattering anything, but use that. And also, when you think about for like a virtual an attendee list or something, and Lee will talk about this a little bit more as well, but how can you use that attendee list with that registration information that you've gathered to also humanize people and find people that have that that same interest as some of your other attendees, and maybe you want to have that connection with them. Ask questions, what is your pain point right now? I love asking that. What is your pain point? Also, what are your expertise in? And that you start forming these connections of who's having a problem with this and who maybe have a solution to this. Not necessarily all the time a product solution, but an action solution about how to do something like this. I need help with networking. I need help with, how do I get my subject matter experts engaged in something? So give something that's a little bit more tangible to what you do, because chances are if you're at you're hosting a conference or you're at a conference, all the attendees are similar and they're all doing very similar things, either just on one side of the aisle or the other for that specific industry. So Lee, did you have anything else to talk about for name tags? Am I leaving anything off?
No, I think that's good. I was just laughing because, the Risk Management Association to me, like, I don't know, what is that? But I can imagine at like the Risk Management Association conference, everyone's like from a bank or something, right? So it's like, one more bank, right? So, I'm the VP of this bank, and you're like, why would, we're all VPs of banks, right? So I think the question is, what is it that's interesting about you, or what are you looking for at this event? I'm looking for, I can offer, I like dogs, whatever those things are, is really different than just saying, Pam Rosenberg, learning manager, risk management. I don't know. I don't think those are particularly helpful. So that real estate, I think, can be much better used. All right, mine. Here we go. Small groups. I think, we're familiar with roundtables. I think there are a lot of sessions that specifically are designed around that, but I would challenge you to say, how do we create small groups kind of at scale and do it a lot, not just there's a coffee break or there's, the roundtable section, but in the middle of our keynote, maybe we just have people say, turn to a neighbor and is this resonating with you? Do you have that same problem in your organization? And it's a really simple moment where you don't have to, go and accost somebody and do an elevator pitch. You can just say, oh, they told me to ask you a question and talk about this thing. And next thing you know, that's the person that I've come away from this conference with. That's the really valuable thing, is I met this person in my small group talking about this thing, instead of just sitting there passively watching a keynote. So I would say, how many times can we create small groups and make it subtle? I mean, we don't have to say, this is a networking session and we're going to put you in small groups. We can say, oh, this is the middle of, workshop B in, salon 7 or something. Just for 10 minutes, we're just going to have you talk about whatever this topic is, the future of our industry, problems with pediatrics, something like that. So I think small groups, and I'm talking about 2, 3, 4s, maybe 5s, but not small groups of 10 and 20. I think to really get a chance to meet people. You're not going to meet everybody at a conference, so let's focus on, a couple good connections. So yeah, small groups. What do you got, Pam?
So I love talking about this one, big boards.
All right, excellent.
So I'm sure many of you have been to a conference where there is this kind of becoming a little bit more prevalent right before we shut down, at least from my experience. There's a wall of ideas. The conference starts out with a blank, huge canvas, and I'm not talking about like 11 by 17. I'm talking like a wall. The exhibitor group, whoever, they set up this thing, and there's markers, and there may be a topic. What was your big idea? Hey, mom, I'm here, or come to this social thing. So that was real. I thought that was effective, and that was a way to kind of get people together. And if they were, 2 people were writing at the same time, different markers, different things to get them, to get creative. And it's hard to sometimes be creative when you're on day 2 or day 3 of no sleep and lots of talking and lots of eating and drinking. But Lee has this fabulous model. I love it. And I did this the other day, actually yesterday, in one of the networking events that I hosted. Is, you go to a conference and maybe they publish an attendee list or an exhibitor list or whatever, and that's fine and dandy and that's great, but names are just names unless you know who they are. So this model that I love,
1,000 names or so, it's 10,000 names on this attendee list.
Yeah, and you're probably going to see duplicate names, but one thing that I love this idea is there's many different ways to do it, but we've done it with a Google Sheet that you make it publicly available, and you have to kind of gauge your audience and your interest and to see what and how trustful you think your people are going to be. But I did it literally yesterday, and it's a Google Sheet. Fill out first name, last name, optional LinkedIn profile, optional website, and so on. And then you ask specific questions in that top row. What are your pain points? Are you open to networking? And chances are, if they're open to networking, they're filling this out. Otherwise, they may just be, observing. But ask specific questions related to the conference, but also related to topics that people want to hear about, or that's, what is the city that you want to go to next, or what will you never do again? Pre-pandemic life, just simple things. And I'm not coming up with specific examples right now, but it's a really fun way to just see this growing list of attendees that are open to networking. And, I've also seen it where we put like a column all the way at the end that says, it's kind of like a, what is it? I'm talking about like a missed you or a missed connections field where it says, I was in X conference, there was someone that was talking about this. If that's you, come find me. And that's the way, for people, because you get lost. And even when you're in person, you don't, you know, people are wearing a name badge, but you're not looking at the name badge or the name tag. You're looking at their face and you're engaging in that conversation. And you often forget who you're talking to. And especially in a Zoom meeting or a GoToWebinar meeting where there's just names. And so that was really fun. I love that idea. Lee, did you have anything to add to big boards?
No, I mean, I think it can take lots of different formats. I mean, online it works really well. Let's see, hey Lucas, see some folks commenting here. So yeah, I mean, even just as an Excel sheet or Google sheet or something like that, it works quite well. But you know, it honestly could be as dumb as just a cork board, right, or something. Where we put up names or we put up, you know, who we are, what we're looking for. And one of the things that I always like about conferences is I don't know, it's sort of the coincidental altruism that happens where, you know, I'm in a session and someone says something and I'm like, actually, I just heard that in this other session and this person, I was talking to this person about that, and you're connecting strangers at a conference. I don't know, I think just the community building of conferences is brilliant. And that big board is, I don't know, I love it. I am going to, let me drop in something in the chat here.
Lee, is it okay if we address this question from Jack here? He had a question for Pam, and Jack's been very active. I wonder if he would want to be promoted to share his webcam and maybe have a conversation with you guys too, like we did in the beginning.
We're gonna, it was great. We're promoting relativity.
Jack, drop in the Q&A if you're
in pajamas, Jack. Yeah, we'd love to have you come up here.
Okay, he said sure, so we're gonna bring him on. Let me find you in the list here.
Waiting music, dun, da, da.
We all know you're gonna have this game plan and you're gonna reverse it, but just that expectation's low and have the thought that it's going to come out better than you think. And the one thing that I will say, and before we let Jack come off, is so many people don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. So what you think is a huge, big, catastrophic problem, it's really not. So just keep that in the back of your mind, and have faith in yourself that you can do it. So maybe that was something I should have saved towards the end, but that was one thing that I've learned over the last, you know, in person and online is, you know, we're figuring out on the fly, and people are, I think, more forgiving now in some regards when it comes to that, because technology changes and we're different. So go ahead, Jack.
I will say before we get to Jack, and hi Jack, thanks for joining us. But I was really apprehensive of even doing this for this session, and Lee convinced me, and he wanted to do it on a different platform, maybe our platform or Zoom or something like that. And I was like, I don't know, we've done it this way for so long. And, you know, I was playing with my own risk management, but I am having so much fun here. And I'm like, how can we do this more often? How can we, you know, like I've never seen our attendees so engaged. So I'm really excited. I feel like I'm learning right now, but that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to drop off here and make Jack the VIP for now.
Yeah, Jack, first of all, your beard looks like perfectly kempt. Your hair is great. Like everything, you look like you knew you were going to be on camera. Tell us who you are, Jack, and tell us where you're from.
I wouldn't go that far. I'm the Director of Professional Development for the American Speech Language Hearing Association. And I guess my question was just about Pam. I love the modeling that's happening, and you know, I think it's a good example of how, you know, modeling novel ideas or more novel ideas can really help both underscore the point, obviously, and make a lasting impression, but you know, create that interesting space for like I already have a couple of ideas of things that I can immediately apply to stuff that's like coming up, and ideas for both in person or online. But anyways, so the open spaces kind of that you were talking about, is that like, I'm trying to think of that, are you thinking of like just, or the big boards, I can't remember exactly, my short-term memory, but the racing card, is it sort of like basically like a creative space? And so, and then do you find that kind of like seeding those spaces kind of help facilitate, make it more approachable for newcomers? And just to note that we've had that kind of idea, I think, work in some capacities for virtual events, where we set the welcome to really model an action that we want learners to do from the get-go, like a sharing action or a connection action, where in our case, the president will kind of model that, and then we will precede with some of the board of directors, precede some of the stuff so that it seems like there's already this activity that's happening as soon as the first people land on that page. And we've had some, I think, sort of typical form for COVID baking, it was the moment of baking and sourdough or whatever. So a lot of those things popped up and people were sharing tons of pictures of stuff they'd baked and recipes and stuff like that. And for in-person spaces, it seems like we've had hit and miss on that sort of idea concept, where the physical location of that space seems really important. When we put it in like a staff lounge space, it's just the traffic is not there already, and there aren't good incentives for people to come there. So the creative space gets kind of lost, and staff basically turn around and start using it. But it's not like we have seen that students, or if you can get students to know about it, at least in our membership, they will definitely like write all over it and express a lot of creativity. And I think that kind of makes it more approachable for other folks.
Yeah.
What do you, I got it. I'll let you go.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, it's funny. So I actually sort of lost the question and all that, Jack. And I was just like, all of these ideas that were coming, and I was like, yes, like great. And that my takeaway is sort of what you were saying at the end there is, I think a lot of times we think, oh, this is going to be it's going to be really networking heavy and we're going to connect people. And then, what happens is we don't do that until, 2 hours in or 3 hours in. And it's that moment where we say, welcome to the conference, turn to your neighbor and meet somebody, or, you're not alone in this. And instead, often what happens is we sort of like forget to do that. And then like for 2 hours, people are walking around, doing this thing. They're like, here I am at the conference. I'm really busy. And the energy kind of comes out of this gathering. And I forget what you said in one of your, if it was in person or online, but, like, let's start with energy and let's start with things that like really pull people together. That's not on my list. I feel like that should have been on our list here, Pam. Thoughts, Pam? I don't know. I actually would love to just keep Jack here the whole time and we just talk about like how to solve the speech language issues there. But yeah, what do you think, Pam?
No, just to, those are really great ideas, and just having this kind of collective place for people to gather thoughts. The other that I would recommend personally is have shorter opportunities for small group, collaboration and so on, because we're all just we're just overwhelmed. But having these opportunities for this personal connection, it gets you off of, multitasking, because, if you're networking with someone, if you're in that small group at a conference, online or in person, you're not multitasking, chances are, because you're actually having a conversation and not just kind of listening with one ear type thing. So just be really thoughtful, be really intentional. And I just love that idea of putting out a shared link for people to connect. And it could, you have to be really careful because people can overwrite it if you do make something public, but you can also figure out ways so that it can't be overwritten, and maybe you kind of publish it every 10 to 15 minutes or something, depending on what your capabilities are, kind of with an updated list that, if you've got 10, 20, 30,000 people, which that would be fabulous. I'd love to watch. Please send me an invitation. Because I've only managed a bit more of the smaller mid-size conference, but just be really thoughtful, be really intentional. And I was going to make a suggestion about something else. When you're in these small groups, in the past, when I've organized these kind of networking things, is first of all, work under the assumption that if they're supposed to have pre-watched or pre-read something when it's related to a conference and it's not really high stakes, expect them not to watch it, a full-blown 45, 60-minute thing. But if maybe you can give them like a teaser, like trim it down a little bit from what that program was, and I'm specifically talking educational tools and things like that, trim it down, throw a little 3 to 5 minute teaser on there. That way, when they're, getting their coffee right before the networking event starts, they've got something to, at least they've got some buzzwords and they know a little bit more who the speaker was or what you're talking about. The other thing that I've done in small groups, which has worked really well, if I can go off a little bit of a tangent, this was for one of the special interest groups that I formerly managed, our young professionals, but you could be any one of your committees. It could be a small board meeting. Break them out and do these word hunts. Lee, have you seen these before, where you create word scramble documents. The same thing. You just throw it onto a Google Sheet or Google Doc, and it's the same thing for everybody. And you manually assign everybody so that their friends can't go into the same room. You can't manually choose a breakout room and so on. But I participated in this, I think sometime last summer, and my energy had never been so high related to networking because it was a competition. It was something to do. And that was really fun. And it did that team building. And then if you're continuing on with more of like this networking type thing, you kind of got this bond with these people that you were on this team with. And, maybe you have to have moderators in those breakout rooms or so, helping coach them and getting conversation going, but everyone loves a good word scramble, especially related to your industry. And the easiest words that I thought that I was throwing out there to get my members to unscrambled, it was the hardest ones. I can't even remember what it was specifically, but it was just such a basic word, but they overlooked it so much. The energy was so high, and I absolutely loved it. So small group stuff, get them engaged, get them talking. And I'm sure there's plenty of other platforms that have little breakout rooms and so on, but experiment with it and just have fun. These are not, life or death scenarios, so we can get creative with that.
Yeah,
Thank you. While I have the moment, I'll drop off and get my ugly mug off the camera here in a second. But just, this may be up on your plan already, but I'd love to know, like, how do you know it actually worked? How do you track outcomes for all this stuff? That's something that we always try and do, and it seems like it's harder to do, or potentially hard to do. And it would be legit if it's kind of like a gut instinct maybe, or like, if you're walking the floor or looking online, you get that sense from just engagement levels. It could be raw engagement levels numbers, but I'd love to know how you two think about how do you know when it works.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so we will bid you adieu, Jack. Thanks for coming up on screen there. That was fast. And I will just say, Jack, if you want to drop your email into, I guess what we're using is Q&A, and then if Mike or Rachel wants to drop it back into the chat, I think often what happens is when someone asks a question, everyone else in the audience is like, I have an answer for Jack. And then you'll actually get a chance to meet him in the hallway or tell him. So if you got suggestions or thoughts for Jack, maybe we can funnel those back to him here. I do want to come back to how you know it's working, but I'm just going to quickly, that was easy, super fast. Okay. A couple last things on our cards here, Pam. I want to just get through those quickly. Then let's come back and talk about how do we know it's working. I'm going to do this sort of speed style because we did promise people like how we were going to connect this to profitability, and I want to make sure that we do that. We have that conversation. So just quickly, matching and mentors. The thing that I think about here is we often say, oh, we bring together all our first year people and we do a reception for them. And to me, it's like, that's great, but it's also kind of like, if you don't mind me saying so, the loser table at the wedding, right? It's a bunch of people who don't know anyone, don't know anything. It's their first year. So I would say we can do something like that, but let's actually connect them with the board or with people who've been in the organization for 20 years. I see actually in our attendee list, there's a number of people that I know in the association world who would be amazing to pair with someone who's a first year person, and they just walk you around and like, oh, this is Steve, and this is Mary, and this is, and it's just so easy for them and they love doing it. Is so much different than saying we put all the people who don't know anyone in a room and we had them meet each other. That's not very powerful. You got something else? Let's do these quick, Pam. I think you got one or two more maybe.
We talked about micro celebrity moments, and all my note cards have been eaten up.
Okay, I got one more. This is a reflection session. So even if we weren't doing this kind of, more interactive session and it was just, Lee does a PowerPoint about networking, I think it opens up the possibility to say after this, we just have a room that we set aside, or we have time, or we have, online breakout rooms, and we say, let's just talk about that. Did you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? Does it resonate with you? Do you still have questions? I think people want to talk, and often what we have is, the plenary lets out and people go, I got to go get a snack, I got to reply to email, I got to go to the bathroom, and we lose that energy and people just don't get a chance to talk. So I would say be intentional about it and think about, giving people that vessel to stream into and talk about this stuff.
Real quick, I want to piggyback on that for just a moment here. There's so many ways, because the meeting, the networking, I'm just going to call it online just for this because we're still online. when the online community or the conversation ends, I'm sure there's platforms. You've all probably got some platform. I'm gonna guess Cadmium. I know Cadmium products, but I don't know all of them. Figure out a way to continue the conversation through community, through either your online community platforms. You can, title it, networking session Purple Star, and have a staff or a dedicated volunteer or impersonate them, however you're going to do it. Get them to take notes and start these conversations and get them going. So, we were talking about X, Y, and Z. There was someone here that was talking about that. I'm not really phrasing this the right way, but there's plenty of ways through LinkedIn. I'm sure there's a Cadmium suite, and forgive me, Mike and team, I don't have the exact names of what all of your products are, but continue that online. And then, Mike, did you want to interject with something?
Yeah, you can finish, but I have some specific examples of what you're talking about that I can share once you're finished.
Yeah, so that was it. Just, it's kind of on the fly adoption, whatever. It's like it's on-site planning. You don't know what you know until you get there. But have scripts and actual specific tasks that your staff, your board, your committee, whoever is, when you task them with that, tell them, okay, you're going to go there after this session and do this, and you're supposed to be note taking and so on, and just make the announcement when you're in that networking space, whatever the case is. Go back to this link, paste it in the chat. You can probably get an attendee list quickly and just broadcast that out. So Mike, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so you were mentioning about like interacting over a more extended period of time. And one case study we did earlier this year, and we actually did a webinar with the folks who put on this event. It was for Display Week, and Palisades Event Management actually ran that virtual event. And they decided that they wanted, because education is like the core of their event, and they decided they wanted to put on-demand content up and let people consume it as they had time to over like a period of 2 or 3 weeks. I can't remember what the exact period of time was, but it was like, go at your own pace, consume the content. But then they also wanted a networking or some kind of like idea sharing kind of component to it. And how do you do that with on-demand content? So what they did is they used our ARS, our audience response system, which has chat functionality, and they attached that to the on-demand content. So it was basically like a live feed message board for every single one of those sessions, where people could go and just, consume it as they wanted, but then add their thoughts to it, connect with other attendees who maybe had an interesting thought about a session, or like, maybe they shared some research that was related to the session, and then they could go off and network with each other one-on-one and maybe come to some new findings together. Even though that was kind of an on-demand experience, it provided that live networking, in a unique and different way for that virtual experience. And then profitability, I know you guys aren't there yet, but we had another session earlier this year about matchmaking. And that's been something that we've seen has been a big push for organizations, especially in terms of communicating, ROI to their sponsors, like having a matchmaking part of networking, so that not only attendees could find other attendees that are like-minded and connect with them, and try to maybe start new projects together, or just have a cup of coffee together, but also connecting attendees with the right exhibitors who are like-minded or are providing solutions that are directly connected to what those attendees want, being able to form those relationships through that matchmaking software. That's what we've been seeing has been really successful in this new world, and also what we're anticipating and hearing is going to be important going forward as we go to those more hybrid or mixed experiences, cross-channel experiences, as people do get more vaccinated and are willing to go back to live events. So that's all I have to say. I think there was another case study I thought of, but it slipped my mind now. But I just wanted to share those specific examples because I thought they were relevant to what you were saying, Pam.
Yeah, and I mean, as you were writing, I was just sketching this out, that the, I think we're going to see a lot more of this, that events tie into learning, learning ties into community, community drives events. And, you know, I think networking, particularly if we talk about associations, is this thing that like we network at the event and then it builds our community, our, you know, our online platform. Anyway, all right, so we should get to this. We should actually get to the profitability question here. Oh, before I forget though, to Jack's question, how do you know it's working? I think, first of all, I would say that's probably something to look at in terms of your surveys and your polls and whatever as you're doing pre and post, to actually ask about engagement and actually ask about networking instead of just saying, you know, did you like the keynote or did you like the food? You know, let's really think about the engagement piece of this. And then the other piece I would say is, you know, I would probably just ask people on the floor, hey, have you met anyone new? If it's, you know, I'm talking to Pam, but Pam and I have known each other for 10 years because we used to work together somewhere else. I think that's a different kind of engagement that's happening there. So, you know, quantitative and qualitative. While you're responding to that, Pam, I'm going to try and call up my screen here. What do you think?
Yeah, and the other thing, and this is no surprise, the cheapest form of marketing is your members. I think, doesn't it? It takes more to get a member than to keep a member. So that's not totally what we're getting at here, but you're going to see interest and demand for this to come back again. You know, we're still so new into what this virtual space looks like. You know, we know what we're doing, but you know, even in 10, 12 months since people really formally adopted virtual 100%, you know, it's changing, and there's so we're still learning. That's the long answer to your short question.
Pam, can you see, or I guess Mike, I'm sharing the right thing here, is that right?
Yep.
Okay. So we've only got, you know, 5-7 minutes or so left, so we're going to kind of breeze through this, but hopefully it sort of sticks in your brain. So if you start on what is for me the top left, increase networking, that to me is where it starts. And, you know, obviously this is iterative. So then I would think, okay, if we increase networking, what does that happen, or what happens after that? And I think a lot of that is just looking at profitability, is decreasing logistics, right? If we just do these reflection sessions instead of having to schedule tons more speakers or tons more keynotes or, you know, all that stuff, I think it really simplifies the amount of time and energy that we have to spend on this event, is just giving people the time and the space to connect. And a lot of these networking events or networking sessions, I think, are really easy to drop in. I think they decrease the burden that you have as an event planner in terms of having to give people tons and tons and tons of content, when a lot of times it's in the margins. It's these hallway moments that people really love, and to really build on that. If we then come down, we talk about more valuable connections, and this is, you know, what Mike was talking about as well, is it's not just that I meet Pam as another attendee, it's that if I'm a vendor or I'm an exhibitor, I get to interact with people in ways that are more natural and more profitable, and more profitable is maybe sort of a dirty word there, but, you know, I'm actually meeting people in a natural space, as opposed to what happens to most exhibitors and sponsors is like we stand on the floor and we just wait for that fly to hit the web. It's not awesome, but, you know, how do we get those people more engaged in an event instead of pushing them into ballroom B and, you know, there you are at your exhibitor, right? And then I think when we come full circle, we say, you know, how is this valuable? People go, wow, I really love going to that event. There's a couple of things that I've gone to over the years, and I think, I honestly don't care who the keynote speaker is. I don't even think about a lot of the sessions. I just say, as an experience in terms of the people I met, you know, that's an event that I want to go to. And I think it makes it more valuable. I don't think as much about the price. I don't really think about where it is, right? I just think that's an event I have to go to. And if every year we have to think about the churn of, oh, 50% of my people aren't going to come back next year, I got to find another 50%. That's a lot of time and energy, as opposed to 90% of our people come back every year and they love it and they tell their friends. Anyway, so we're going to have the chat running, and we're going to have people telling us what we were doing wrong on this model. But if you want to drop it into Q&A, you can do that. Yeah, does that resonate with you, Pam? I mean, we talked about this before, but
Yeah, no, and part of the thing is, you know, how you drive profitability is especially through, you know, these community engagement tools, whether it's, you know, the software that you're using, whether it's LinkedIn or whatever, that you're going to be able to, as the organizer, and I'm just talking not necessarily one-off committee meetings and whatnot, but you're going to be able to figure out what what the hot topics are and what you should be offering the next go around, whether it's a short micro learning opportunity, whether it's a webinar or a new course that you should be developing, something like that, what to offer the next go around. And you can also find your champions and your ambassadors for your own organization through these networking opportunities, because your organization has to survive somehow, and it's through, most likely, if you're a traditional association, is off of your volunteers and your volunteer leaders. So use these opportunities to harvest that data, but with the overarching theme that it's for networking, but you can really figure out what the pain points are and what the future looks like for that industry. And you're going to have all these thought leaders in your industry gathering together. Lee had mentioned, figure out how to do these mentoring relationships, help build that. There's plenty of softwares out there, plenty of people that are willing to talk about it. So just see how you can incorporate that. Because again, at the end of the day, I want to go to the conference to hear what the sessions are about, no matter what it is, but I'm really there to meet the people and meet the connections. And this is just what keeps me going. But back earlier, what I said is, take your model of what your conference, your meeting looked like 2 years ago. Is it still relevant today? Do a little bit of reading, do a little bit of research, reach out to one of us and sort of just have kind of like, I don't want to say a deep dive into it, but just, take a step back and pause for a moment and think holistically, is this really what your conference should be looking like at this moment?
Yeah, and I mean, over the last year, I think it's enabled people to say, we can do things differently. And boy, I really feel like the last year people felt this pain of, wow, turns out they were going to our conference for a lot of things that weren't just sitting in a room watching a PowerPoint. And how do we replicate that? And how do we, keep the focus on that? In a way it gets easier when we go back in person, but it doesn't have to be in person, that connections happen in person. I've never met Pam in person, and truly one of my wins of the last year is meeting people like Pam. So it's been great. I just dropped in some more info in the chat here. We're going to do some more hands-on stuff, small groups, breakouts, and whatever in a couple weeks with nonprofits and association execs. So that'll be fun. Questions, let me know. Final thoughts here, Pam? I know we got to turn it back to Mike here for a second or two, but last thoughts?
No, I pretty much said what I needed to say. And reach out to one of us if you had an idea, you want to see if it sticks. I'm not claiming to be an expert by any means. I've just kind of organized and participated, in a decent amount over the last year. And I'm definitely ready to get back in person, but I know that virtual is not going away. And, just really just get to the core of your meeting. I don't want to say it should be, but it really needs to be, because people join your association for that networking. They do it for the local chapter meetings, to give back. And the more that people are able to give, the more they're able to receive out of that from these opportunities.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to leave it. Thanks, Pam. And thank you to Mike and Cadmium for having us. We'll turn it back to you.
This was an incredible session. I thank you so much, Lee and Pam, for your knowledge and your wisdom, and also to Carmen and Jack, who joined us midstream as our what do you guys call them, micro VIPs. That was incredible. I love this. I had so much fun during this, and I feel like I learned a lot during the session. So I hope all of you who stuck with us to the very end also got the same kind of value out of this session. I really encourage you to click that bit.ly link that Lee dropped in. I know he's going to do a follow-up session to this one where he actually gets people, hands-on, engaging with each other. I'm going to go ahead and sign up for that right now, so I hope to see some of you there. But again, thank you for joining us today. cadmiumcd.com/webinars is the place to go for some additional opportunities to learn exciting new ways to add things like networking and technology to your events. So go ahead and check cadmiumcd.com/webinars and keep an eye out for some of those upcoming changes as we make the transition from Cadmium CD to just Cadmium. Lee, Pam, again, thank you so much. And to everyone else who joined us, thank you and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.